Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Guidelines. I'm Ryan Speltz with Creative First Mortgage. Today, I'm super excited. The podcast that we've got launched now takes you past the listings, the programs, and all the polished sales talk to reveal real people shaping today's real estate world. We uncover the personal stories, struggles, and wins that define each guest, giving you, the listener, a fresh human perspective on the business and the person behind the business. Together, we're on a mission to help you see the person behind the professional, because real estate isn't just about deals, it's about connection. So today's guest is someone I'm excited to introduce you to, not just for what he's accomplished in the market, but for the drive, values, and vision behind his success. So we asked Larry what his purpose was behind the scenes, and he told us that his purpose is to clearly identify a buyer's goals or a seller's goals, build a strategy around them, and align them with an attainable outcome in the marketplace. So let's go a little bit deeper beyond the industry sound bites, and let's explore what makes you tick on and off the field. So this is Larry. He is with eXp Realty. We've done a couple of deals together. Great guy, hustler, love it. Larry, tell us a little bit about how you utilize your purpose in every day and how you got there.
Yeah, good question. I knew that question when signing up was going to be used. Didn't know we were going to lead off with it, but sort of how I utilized it is, and how it came about is, I noticed most people on the buy side come to me and they have like sort of an outline, like a general idea of what they want, but they really don't know what they want. Early on in my career, that would be me going out on multiple tours before I even figured out, like, oh, you clearly don't really know what you want or what the dream home looks like. And so, I sort of just like moved that to the front end. And, I just use Jotform, honestly, in a series of questions that, doesn't exhaust my buyer, short of 20 questions. It gives me enough information to sort of start to build a file on them. In the middle part of that, I strategize with my expertise, past transactions. I'm always trying to get ahead of, mitigating potential issues, and then we go out and we execute.
I love it. Yeah, that's great to be able to have a group of questions to ask people, and when they respond, you're kind of able to help guide them. I love that you mentioned that most people don't have a plan, because I think it'll help people feel pretty comfortable, right, when they're approaching someone and they think that they have to have it all figured out. When you're doing that and helping them build their plan, what questions are you often getting from the buyers to be able to, in response to your questions, really? Because a lot of times I'm sure there's people like, hey, I can't answer this question because they're not really thinking about that stuff. But what kind of questions are you getting back from the buyers that are really, really common for you, and how do you answer them?
Yeah, my first time home buyers, a lot of the questions are more geared towards the process, so sequencing of events, how much money do I need, either like gifted from family, or if it's in a retirement account, how much money do I need like on hand, to pay for inspections? Do I pay for appraisal, prior to the close of escrow? It's a lot of, questions geared towards the as-is agreement and what they can and cannot do. Some of my more experienced buyers, people who buy with me, multiple transactions, multiple times, your investors or relocation, they'll ask, they'll kind of lean more on my expertise of like the area and sort of how to either, buy, at a value, or they know exactly what they like in a neighborhood and sort of that feels like. And so I'll draw more on me being a local expert and having lived in Pinellas County my whole life.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that you're able to, work and live where you've lived your whole life. Like, I think there's, we're from obviously living in Florida. There's not a lot of people that can say that they've been in Florida their whole life, right? It's been one of those, we're kind of that like landing spot for people often. When people are moving into Florida, what kind of conversations are you having with those types of people? Because I know, you're probably dealing with quite a few of that, just like any of the real estate agents in office. What are you experiencing when people are moving in? How are you advising them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, what are we at? May 20th. I would say for the last 6 months or so, the first question's always, what flood zone, ever since the hurricanes, right? How many feet of elevation, and everything having to do with like buying a property that's going to be kind of hurricane ready and will, stand the test of the storms we get every so often, right? But aside from that, it's a lot of the area and the architecture of the home, the type of community, right? Like if somebody's coming from the Midwest or the Northeast, and they want a golf course community, or they want new construction, right? I start to sort of like lay out in alignment with like their budget, sort of like what parts of town offer that, right? And obviously like St. Pete has its upsides, right? But not a great place for somebody looking to, sort of live the country club lifestyle, or have a gated community, an HOA community, new construction. So that's sort of like on the cons list of St. Pete if you're a buyer looking for that, right? And so I start to kind of put them in the direction of like what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's super important to be able to do as a real estate agent, having their best interest in mind, because there's a lot of people that just skip all those questions, right? There's a lot of agents out there that end it dropped off. So I'll start from there. That's a really good thing to have as an agent, because a lot of people just kind of blow by those opinions and they just push kind of in the direction that they want to go, right? And that can be a struggle for buyers coming in. And I'm really glad to hear that you're really advising instead of directing and kind of pushing into a certain direction. So I kind of want to transition a little bit out of the business side of it and kind of get a little bit deeper into Larry. So
Sure.
I know that you're a hustler, you're a grinder. What is one mindset or habit that you credit for your success?
Mindset or habit that I credit? I'll give you sort of one of each, right? So habit, I'll have to say, is my morning routine. I know that's about as cliche as it gets, right? But I don't often wake up with like a go-getter kind of mindset, right? Maybe about 20-30% of the time I do, and that's awesome. And I still do my morning routine, anyways. But I heard something recently, it's not mine, but I can't remember where it was from, but I give myself the first 2 hours of the day, and then I give everybody else the rest of it, right? So my phone's on DND. I'm doing all the things, right? I have a room here for, stretching and sort of just kind of a few readings. I'll put on a few people I look up to on YouTube, right? I'll do my gym routine, take a shower, and then we're good to go, right? So that's the habit. And then the mindset is always in pursuit of like perspective, right? And so that I'll succeed in any market is what I tell myself, right? Early on in my career, that was not the case. When the market would start to shift and, you hear things inside your, brokerage and your colleagues and the group chats and media and news, you start to get a bit flustered, right? And the mindset for me that I tend to pull myself back to is that in any market, people succeed, I will succeed. And you just put the next foot in front of the other. And I'm in control of my success from the perspective that I only fail when I give up, and I just haven't given up yet. Right. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the cliche. Honestly, man, I feel like the more people I talk to, the more I recognize that that's where the success comes in is there's so many cliche sayings, and a lot of people will just brush them off as if they're not, important to listen to. But that stuff is so fundamentally important. And it's what people, they want to have success, but then you say something cliche and then they just brush it off. Like, it's like, oh, well, everybody, that's not the truth. There's no way that could work. And, like, it's us as successful people just giving away the knowledge, and those people, they're just not wanting to receive it. Right. Like, that's awesome that you've kind of cut through the noise, like you said, and been able to do that. And that mindset of being able to succeed in every market is so huge, because you're going to be doing the same things every day then, and out there and grinding and talking to people, and instead of just kind of sitting back and listening to the news tell you that it's not good, right? So that's really good. So if you could look back, you mentioned early on in your career, and this may be the same answer as what you just gave, but if you could look back and give your younger self one piece of advice when starting, like right when you started out, what would it be?
That's a good question. I would say that I would say if I could give myself one piece of advice from what I know now to my younger self, it would be, sort of like do without doing and all gets done, right? Speaking to like my ability to stay sort of even keel, level headed throughout the process of, what we're doing is a lot of consulting, a lot of, customer relations, communication, right? Things can kind of fluster you really quickly, right? And still to this day, right? I do in the process of dealing with other agents, dealing with appraisers, dealing with title reps and lenders and all the pieces to the puzzle for what we do. It can get away from me, right? So yeah, I would say responding rather than reacting.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put that, of being able to, because giving a response takes actual thought and digestion of what's happening, right? Or what's been said to you. Yeah, I love that, man. That's really solid. This is going to be a fun one. And if it takes you a couple seconds to respond, we understand, but it's a good one. So what do you think that most people misunderstand about you or your business the most?
Oh man, that is a really, really good one. I think this will be the end of the podcast. We'll talk about this for however long we're going for.
That's the way it goes, man. I love it.
Oh man, what do I think is misrepresented or not understood about real estate?
Well, and it could be either you or your personal business, so like what you do on a daily basis, or if you wanted to go as broad as real estate, you could take it there as well. So if it's easier to kind of condense it into your business personally, that makes sense too.
That's I kind of first initial thought wanted to compartmentalize it between like what my friends, who see my day to day and in my social circle think about my business, and then what the general public, because we've all read the Facebook threads of what is thought about real estate agents, lenders, and such.
Yeah, even those old memes where they just had the pictures, what I do, what I actually do, what my friends think I do. And
I kind of enjoyed those. I would say, I don't want to say the easiest one, but is that, the most widespread thought is that like we do very, very little to acquire what we, get paid at. I mean, I'm just going to pull the cat out the bag that like, we do get paid very well at closing tables for what we do, right? And I'll never say that's not the case. I'll never try to downplay that. I think some agents take the approach of like, oh, well then, I do get paid, 10, 15, 20, 30 grand, at closing, but like, then I take 30% for my, they try to, they try to,
yeah, that old post where they just list out like 55 or 500 different things in a row, and it's like, that's what you signed up for.
So I'm going to take that in opposition, right? Because every business owner has some variant of that, right? And some form of accounting that they do and expenses. But like what I would like to sort of like express is like, in any sort of success, right? You don't see like what it took to get there. They don't see like, hundreds of hours of like studying the market, right, over the course of years early on when I didn't know anything about the real estate market, right, and see like how many showings we set up to go preview houses when you didn't have a client in that neighborhood or area, so that you could learn the market, so that when 6 months later you get a call about oh, what do you think about X area, Y area, and why? Like I'm prepared to deliver that conversation intelligently, right? And then they don't see like all of the prospecting hours to acquire a client, right? And that's just the starting point. Now I have a client, and then they don't see the amount of work that goes in, the amount of really the amount of sacrifice too, right? Because like we're working when your client is not working. And so, if your client's a 9 to 5, that means you're working like, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on their drive into work. And then you're working like 5 to midnight in a lot of cases, and we're dealing with time contingencies, in the agreements, as right? And so, Unfortunately, if I just want to take a day off and I'm within that inspection contingency, and I have timelines I need to adhere to in representation of my client, I just don't get to take that day off,
Yeah, it's definitely a grind when you're in the process for sure. But you mentioned just even the showing aspect of it. So being out and around and helping people when you're not, you can't go out on a boat and then think that something's not going to happen, right? Because it's always going to happen when you want it to the least, I guess. So I love that you're the grind mentality, being able to apply that. If you were able to fix that messaging, then so obviously with that being the misunderstanding, that means people are seeing messaging somewhere that they don't believe, or where do you think that comes from, and how would you approach it in a messaging way to kind of get the word out there to say, like, there is a percentage of us, because there's always the bad apples in every industry, but there is a percentage of us that are out here actually putting in the work. And it might, we might not just do that much work on your specific transaction, but like what you said, like all of the pre-work and all of the other stuff when we don't have clients. How would you get that messaging out there to those people to help them understand that aspect of it?
Yeah, I think getting the message out there is just showing more content of I think social media does a good job of showing all the great things, and so maybe we created our own, sort of issue. You see people in these luxury homes, they only want to show the good, just not even in real estate in general, right? But I think content generated towards sort of the suck of it. And, where did it come from? I think you led with, I'm not really super certain, aside from maybe it originated from us, like I said. But I mean, even my own father, I sold their home 2 years ago now. And it's been 2 years. And just last week, he was like, we said something about their new townhome. We got them when they sold that home. I repped them on the buy side. And he was like, oh yeah, when we sold the home, I had over $40,000 worth of closing costs with commissions. And, he was still salty about that, right? But I just told somebody last week, just sell it yourself. Try and sell it yourself. And then I'm happy to help you in a month if you can't. So go out there and try it, and see what some people do have success doing it. The overwhelming majority don't, right? And I hope that if you work hard enough, you can do it yourself, but also understand that, it's going to come with a lot of pain, right? And it is another job. That's why there is, a job for that. And, a lot of time involved.
Yeah. It's such a way to get that out there with the messaging of, it's not just, you're not paying me for the time I spent on just your transaction, for sure. And I would agree with you that it is a self-induced issue. Lenders, we have the same thing, right? Ours is a little bit different because we had, an entire global collapse behind ours, but it was also self-induced up to that point. But it's the same thing for us. We put up with the same responses and the same, oh, you don't earn, you don't deserve what you're earning, and people don't recognize all of the other stuff that goes into it. So, I would definitely encourage you to focus on the suck part of it. And you mentioned FSBOs, utilizing, a handout or an ebook or something that shows you here's all the things you're going to go through step by step. And I'll show you exactly how to sell your house by yourself. But when you want to come back, I'll be here ready to take over all of the rest of the responsibilities. Right. So, I think you've got really good messaging that you could be putting out there as well. So last question for you. What's next for you, whether it's professionally or personally, that you're most excited about?
Yeah. Next for me, personally, professionally, my next, big sort of pillar personally for me is just competing against myself, right? Is just that I know where I'm at today, mindset, fitness, bucket list type things, right? And I try to always keep my vision inside, right? And just looking at myself, comparing myself to myself. And so next year I want to be a different and better version of myself, right? And all of those things, and then professionally, quite honestly, man, is to continue doing what I'm doing and scale at a rate that is manageable, if that makes sense, right? I don't want to overnight wake up and have so much business that I need to hire on, buyer's agents and TCs and, admins, and that may not be the best fit. I don't have a huge desire to manage people. I do have the skill set to manage people. But I really put a huge emphasis around keeping the people around me, very intentionally and with purpose, right? And I do have a few guys that I work with and I take listings with and I share business with, and that's very strategic and intentional. And if I find more of those people, that's awesome, and it grows gradually and organically like that. And if I don't, I'm happy with my business growing at a few, points each year over year, right?
Yeah, that's awesome that you're at a point where you can understand that, because I feel like, oftentimes we get kind of stuck in the grind of chasing the next transaction because we need it, or, we think we need it or whatever. But it's that, the way you phrase that, you definitely have a great strategic plan to grow instead of just throw it all at me all at once kind of thing. So that's awesome. So awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you, Larry. I appreciate you spending some time with us here. And if this conversation hits home with you, feel free to reach out to Larry. I will put his contact information in the show notes below. And if you have anything that you need from us or any questions about mortgages, real estate, we definitely have the connections for that. And just remember, if you're stuck somewhere, whether it's housing or lending or real estate, you don't need permission to pivot. You don't need someone else's version of success to build your own. We're here to show you what it looks like to do it a little bit differently, with real stories, real decisions, and a business that actually fits the life you want, or a home that fits the life you want. And if this episode got you thinking, do us a favor, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone else who's ready to break their mold.